Awesome. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Virtual Conference for Emerging Professionals. My name is Daniel Nzueta. I'm the Associate Director of Recruitment, Engagement, and Volunteerism. I'm excited to join you for our last session of this process. I'm happy to welcome two of my colleagues, Amy Geist, the Director of Strategic Initiatives, and Alexa Wesley, Associate Director of Research and Policy, to talk to us about NASPA's grant-funded work. Amy and Alexa, I'll turn it over to you all.
All right, well, thank you, Danny, and hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our Know Your NASPA series. I'll be sharing my screen shortly, but if at any point you have any questions, we'll have some time at the end for you to ask them, or feel free to type them into the chat, and we'll get to them at the end as well. So, 1 second. Okay. So again, my name is Alexa Wesley, and I am an Associate Director for Research and Policy here at NASPA. Before this, I was an intern at Lumina Foundation in their DC office, where I focused on college affordability and institutional finance. This was a really great opportunity to better understand how a philanthropy operates, and it exposed me to a variety of organizations in the higher ed space, which is how I first learned about NASPA and the range of issues pertaining to the student affairs profession. So almost 3 years at NASPA later, I've been able to work on the grantee side of things on a few projects that Amy and I are going to spend some time talking through today.
And I'm Amy Geist, Director of Strategic Initiatives with NASPA. I was a member of NASPA as a student affairs professional at a couple of different colleges and universities across the country for about 13 or 14 years, and as a grad student. So it was a great opportunity for me to come to work with NASPA, focused on some of this grant work that we're going to talk about today. And it's been a really great pleasure to be with NASPA for about 3 years. So as we go through the agenda today, we'll tell you a little bit about some of the different grant work. We'll tell you a little bit about the research and policy team. We're going to tell you more detail about two different research projects that we have that are grant funded, and we will give you an opportunity to ask questions. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to type those in, or join us verbally later if you would like. So NASPA has many different pieces to it, and we do a lot for the field of student affairs, as many of you know. We are a membership association. We serve student affairs professionals and the field. We have people who work to focus on member services and on professional development. Alexa and I are both part of the Research and Policy Institute team. So this gives you a little bit of a look at what we do. We do lots of our own original research. We provide webinars and live briefings, and do policy analysis and help with all kinds of assessments and other things that serve the field. And our team breaks down into a few different focus areas, so mentioning a few of those previously, but doing data analytics, policy and advocacy. You may already be familiar with some of the different publications or assessments or things that we've done in those different areas. So we do those and also conduct our own research and highlight best practices for the field of student affairs. And as Alexa mentioned, we are going to talk to you a little bit today about research and work that we do that's funded by external grants. So one of those that I'll start as a quick highlight is the advising grant. So we have this grant-funded project focused on advising. This came to us from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They identified NASPA to manage the Advising Success Network, and that's a partner association team. It involves Achieving the Dream, American Association of State Colleges and Universities, ASCU, EDUCAUSE, and NACADA, which is the Global Community for Academic Advising, as well as the National Resource Center for the First Year Experience and Students in Transition. And so those partners get together and work together to support the shift to holistic advising and to help institutions reframe how they do what they do, and the resulting assets that they are developing and are continuing to collaborate and create will end up helping institutions redesign their advising practices, their different approaches, and increase student success outcomes in order to be more equitable and holistic.
All right, so another grant that we've been working on, so NASPA and ACRO, the American Association of Collegiate Registrars and Admission Officers, received a grant from Lumina Foundation in 2015 to develop digital records of student learning and to try and pilot these records at 12 different institutions. The idea for this was to create a record for documenting all student learning in a more comprehensive way, thus the name Comprehensive Learner Record. To the right is an example of just one CLR framework that was developed by one of the pilot campuses at the University of Central Oklahoma. Here, both NASPA and ACRO were awarded grants for the same project as a way to tap into our different strengths and areas of relevant expertise. For NASPA, the conversation was really centered on the growing number of options to create co-curricular transcripts and to look at mechanisms to capture and report student learning going on outside the classroom. Whereas for ACRO, registrars are realizing the limitations of those academic transcripts in communicating the nature of learning from coursework for employers, and we're looking for a better way to illustrate this. And after this pilot phase, Lumina awarded NASPA and ACRO another grant in 2017 to continue working on the Comprehensive Learner Record work and to help other institutions adopt them at a system level. So now I'm going to dive a little deeper into our on-campus student employment grant work. NASPA received a grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to conduct research about on-campus employment and the ways it can serve as a student success strategy. The Gates Foundation was initially interested in this topic for several reasons. One, we know that with 70 to 80% of full or part-time students working while in school, that working students are a really large population on college campuses, and on-campus employment specifically is a long-standing practice that has already been happening in most colleges and universities. So as institutions are asked to do more with less, rather than investing in something brand new, student employment is a practice already in place that could be enhanced and leveraged. The foundation also has a commitment to addressing student financial wellness, as Amy will talk more about. But here we see the paychecks that students receive from working as a way to help meet student needs. And finally, on-campus student employment is a paid experiential learning opportunity accessible to students who might not be able to travel off campus for work or engage in unpaid internship. So in addition to that, just being in close proximity to classes and other services can promote a student's sense of connection to the campus and help save them time. And all of this helps make the case for why we wanted to look further into understanding on-campus student employment and how institutions are transforming this practice into a high-impact success strategy. So the goals of our research, we wanted to understand the landscape of student employment and to highlight promising practices happening in the field. We took a multi-phase approach to this work, where the first phase involved conducting phone interviews with campus practitioners and experts in the field, and from these we identified 5 institutions to have face-to-face site visits with. During these site visits, we had student focus groups and interviews with supervisors and program administrators as a way to better understand how each program operated. We took the findings from this to put together and administer a survey sent out to colleges and universities across the country. And we collaborated with a few other organizations, such as the National Student Employment Association and the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators, to help spread the word about our survey and widen the reach of our research. So we took all of our findings to produce a landscape analysis report that discussed ways to support and scale conditions of highly impactful employment programs. A few of these conditions included having senior leadership involved to ensure greater alignment about student employment goals and the need to shift that experience into something meaningful. We also heard that supervisors are critical and really serve as the linchpin in supporting student employee growth. And we know that strategic data utilization, we found that to be an area for improvement for most institutions, but is highly valuable for those who do use the data to help improve their programs, and document student growth and advocate for the expansion of on-campus student employment programs. And finally, before I'll turn it over to Amy, I just wanted to note that NASPA also codified the research to develop our landscape analysis report, as to also help create a companion rubric for institutions to use as a tool for assessing their current efforts and determining to what extent the conditions that are already happening on their campuses are characteristic of a high impact practice. And while this rubric isn't meant to be an extensive program evaluation tool, we created this as a way to help guide planning discussions and identify current strengths and areas for improvement to help the campuses as they look more into advancing their efforts. So now I'll turn it over to Amy to speak more to NASPA's emergency aid grant work.
Thanks. So in the area of emergency aid, NASPA initially received a grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to conduct a landscape analysis. So similar to what you just heard described, a very similar process where a survey was done that was collected across the country. We got responses from institutions of all sectors and sizes and resulted in this report, which we used to illuminate what institutions were already doing to meet the needs of students that were facing unexpected financial crises. That landscape analysis and the resulting information led to additional conversations with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and an additional grant for NASPA. That second grant was used to foster a community of practice and raise the national conversation about emergency aid. And so on this slide, you'll see a lot of information about the different types of things that we were responsible to deliver as part of that grant. So we convened an advisory group that helped us to determine some of what was going on, what we maybe needed to do, and the direction that we would start in, and helped us frame things up at the beginning. We also then did lots of presentations about the topic of emergency aid with a variety of different partners, institutions and associations, other people that were working in this area at regional and national conferences over the course of the last few years. And we hosted a national convening for a couple of days where we brought people together to talk about emergency aid, to strategize what we might need next and what the field needed in order for that to advance. And then the major piece of this was to launch a website where we would share the tools and resources that are being developed and that are coming from institutions and associations and researchers and others that are helping to advance emergency aid across the country. So a quick snapshot about the website. We used a company that helped us to design, build, and launch that. It's www.studentarc.org, and it is an online resource that is intended to be used by institutions for these tools and resources to assist in their efforts to support students through the use of emergency aid. You've already heard mentioned that the on-campus student employment rubric was developed. We also have a rubric that was developed for emergency aid as well to help institutions sit down together. It's been a top download from the site since it was added, and we want institutions to use that to identify where they currently are and assess themselves, and then identify the next steps to help move their resources forward to what their students need. In addition to that tool, NASPA also partnered with many different associations and colleagues and other institutions to collect and share promising practices, different recommendations, insight via a lot of different formats, which you'll see coming up, in hopes that these tools will assist institutions in providing support to their own students once they think about how other institutions are doing different types of aid and administering the support, that they can figure out how that could work for their own students. So one of those different types of tools and resources are some videos. It's one of the most popular types that we have on the website. They are watched frequently and sought out and shared. We visited Spelman College, Community College of Philadelphia, Seminole State College of Florida, and the University of Central Florida, as well as going to in a meeting when a number of colleagues were together. We sat down for some interview videos that you'll see a couple of pictures of those there at the bottom as well, to sit down with some practitioners and learn about what they're doing, and help to highlight the good work that's happening at institutions and help it to be something that others who visit the site can see how they might do that and implement something similar at their own institution. And we're really grateful to all those schools and colleagues that invited us in and partnered with us to provide those great little highlights and vignettes. Another piece that we have on the website is an interesting partnership that we had as a sub-grantee using NASPA, the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators. They're a great partner for us, as you've already heard mentioned, but they helped us by creating a suite of resources, blogs, info sheets, decision trees, FAQ, to assist campus administrators in better understanding the importance of the partnership with financial aid and how that works together to administer emergency aid. So the info sheets and decision trees and the accompanying blogs and videos help people in other areas of campus to understand how different types of aid may impact a student's financial aid package, or what's included in the cost of attendance, or how to decide which type of aid might be best suited for different situations, and bring it all together so that they understand the intersections of those things and the impact of giving aid to students. Collaboration across the institution can definitely be challenging, and so these resources were intended for facilitating understanding of that so that colleagues can know how to work together and really make it a much more seamless and pleasant experience for the student if we better understand how other partners on campus need to administer aid and what we are doing can impact a student. So those resources are definitely still very helpful to everyone across campus, and they're regularly accessed on the website. The grant also allows NASPA to continue seeking and collecting beneficial resources to continue adding to what's available on Student ARC. So we have an invitation out for practitioners to submit insights and how they administer aid, questions that they have, and to kind of continue that discussion and facilitating the community of practice, and to learn how they're impacting students and themselves by this process and using emergency aid to serve students. So we know these assets will continue to be in high demand as awareness about basic needs and security and the use of emergency aid continues to increase around the country.
All right, so we've told you all a little bit about the research policy team and shared more about our grant work, but some of you may be thinking, what does this all mean for your day-to-day? So even if you aren't working on any of these particular topics or directly involved in IR or policy, it can be really valuable to stay up to date with what's happening in the field and to stay connected with new research and think about where an institution might fit in the national landscape. NASPA wants to continue to be in a good position to help lead and inform the field and to shine a light on the national level about the good work already happening on so many college and university campuses. Data is your friend, and keeping up the latest research and policy out there can help you anticipate needs on your own campus, frame an underlying problem or the effectiveness of a solution being piloted to stakeholders. It can help inform a call to action or even prioritize your efforts or help you prioritize your efforts and identify potential opportunities for collaboration. We continue to look for grant opportunities and ways to partner with others to develop the highest quality of scholarship for our members and to move the field forward with students always at the center of our work. So there are a number of ways you can stay connected with us. In addition to the resources shared about advising, student ARC, and student employment, where you can follow our action made with advocacy and sign-on letters, and also keep an eye out for content related to our live briefings and blog posts and reports on our main NASPA website. And of course, you can stay connected with us over email. So that wraps it up for us, but we do have some time left over to answer any questions that you all might have.
Great, thank you so much, Alexa and Amy. Appreciate your presentation with us today. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to either unmute and ask the questions directly, or you can enter the questions in the chat. Perfect, and I'll start us off with a question to both of you. If you are someone who is interested in research and policy work but hasn't done it before, what do you show, or what was your experience like of kind of getting into this space? How do you become someone who's more connected with research and policy if it isn't directly an avenue that you have in your work?
I would start out by saying a little bit about what Alexa just said, that, just reading up on it, keeping up on what's happening, and then reaching out to a network to ask people for, what are you reading? What are you thinking about? And volunteering to be part of something. I mean, there may be plenty of opportunities to be able to assist with a research project and to kind of get your feet wet and try things out, even if you're not going to be leading that project.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you said it, Amy. I don't know if I would have much to add to that. Again, I just think that there is so much work happening and so many other institutions might be in a similar situation as you or encountering similar challenges. So just tapping into other networks, whether it's NASPA or another organization that taps into like your community, I think that is important in identifying things that have already worked well and other anticipated challenges and how people have overcome those. But if there aren't any other questions for us, I know we have a few topics that Amy have teed up too. If Amy, you want to tell us a little bit more about our grant process and the grant life cycle.
Sure. Yeah, we thought we'd give a little bit of an insight into that too, because this was new for me, my first time working with grants and understanding a little bit about how this works. And just it sometimes can be different, but for the most part with what we have seen, partnering with a funder and learning about what their interests are and what your specialty might be and why you're a good fit had led to a proposal being submitted where we outlined what all we would deliver as part of the grant and what your needs are in terms of what the finances that are required to be able to contribute and produce the outcome. Or the deliverables. So presenting that, once that gets approved and the funding begins, from my experience, it's been annual reporting to share how your progress has been and how the spending has been and what things you've accomplished. But you do that every year of the grant or a different period of time depending on how long the grant might be. And then we'll have one final report that will be submitted after the full cycle of the grant. And there are regular conversations that some of the NASPA staff, the RPI staff, have with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation team that we interact with mostly to give them updates, get some information, kind of make adjustments along the way, keep them updated. But we have those annual reports that we do as well as that final report.
Fantastic. Thank you for that additional context. I think that's helpful to know for a lot of us who haven't worked with grant-funded projects in the past and how that happens, how you can do that even on a college campus, as a lot of large foundations are being more and more interested in working in these projects and usually do so in grant-funded processes. Perfect. What have been some of the biggest takeaways that you all have had from the work that you have done directly, either from some of the highlights of the project or just your experience with the work?
I think just really seeing how much context makes a huge difference. Of course, the one-size solution doesn't work, but just even when you're really doing the research and talking more with people about their different approaches, for example, with student employment work, some might have it housed in HR versus career services or in a student development office, and those type of decisions really speak to the culture or about student employment or about that topic and how the institution chooses to approach it in a way that makes sense for them and their priorities and their student populations. So I think with research just uncovering the difference that context can make in different approaches to things.
For me, with working on emergency aid, two main things come to mind. One is that almost everybody has the same questions. They're all wondering how they're going to make things work. They're wondering how, if anybody else is talking about it, everyone else is talking about it. So, having everyone understand that there is that community, you can call somebody else at basically any other institution and say, how are you handling this kind of a situation? And they want to meet with you and talk with you and share stories and learn from each other. And the other thing is just that everyone's doing very innovative, interesting things and making it work with what they have and are trying to find those other partnerships. So, those are really creative opportunities, and there's a lot of great partnership and collaboration on campus, in the community, and nationally, and with alumni. And so there's some really interesting things going on, and people are recognizing that it's not just I have this issue that's happening at my institution. It's happening everywhere. Everybody wants to talk about it. We want to try to resolve the things that are happening and provide assistance to students, and that there are some really cool things happening across the country.
Fantastic. Well, Amy and Alexa, thank you both so much for your time. We greatly appreciate you joining us for the virtual conference for emerging professionals, and we'll have this presentation available for everyone shortly by next week. So thank you both so much again for your time. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back at 2:30 in just a few minutes for our next session.
You're welcome. Thank you all for being here, and reach out to us if you have any questions or want to get connected.